Hi there, and welcome to Lost in Literature. I thought I'll tackle one of the ICSE poems today called A Considerable Speck by Robert Frost. A very simple poem expressed almost colloquially, and yet, it reflects a lot of philosophical depth. So let's take a look at it. A speck that would have been beneath my sight on any but a paper so white, set off across what I had written there, and I had idly poised my pen in air to stop it with a period of ink, when something strange about it made me think this was no dust speck by my breathing blown, but unmistakably a living mite, with inclinations it could call its own. Uh, to begin with the very first line, we sense the poet kind of displaying a rather patronizing attitude towards this um, speck, you know, on his sheet of paper. I mean, that's where he's writing maybe some poem. And he suddenly notices the speck. And who notices a speck really? Who cares about it? A speck is a speck is a speck. And it's of no concern to anybody. And you have his tone rather patronizing here when he says, beneath my sight. And he's about to kind of dismiss it when suddenly he notices it setting across the paper in a burst of activity. So, I mean, firstly, he had noticed it because it was conspicuous on that white sheet of paper. And secondly, it seems to be setting across the paper, right? And you have him kind of wondering about it naturally. And as he's writing, we can imagine him, just suspending the act of writing and kind of poising his pen in the air. And he is kind of wondering whether he should just put a stop to the flight of the speck of dust, apparently, with a period mark. And note the word he uses, period, in this line, to indicate a punctuation mark. But at the same time, when he says period, we think of it in terms of time. Like, let's say, putting an end to the lifespan of a mite. Now, when he's contemplating on the movement, I mean, he's observing the movement of this speck of dust, he suddenly realizes that it's doing something strange and it is moving not because of his breath, which must have been blowing on it, but of its own volition. And then it hits him with a sense of surprise that it is a living mite, not a mote of dust like he imagined earlier, but a living mite. And he could see clearly that it had its own inclination, in the sense it had its own, predilections, preferences. I mean, it was showing its independent kind of thinking, all right, at its level, all right? So it's very interesting now, this encounter the poet seems to have with the so-called uh, dust mote, which turned out to be a living mite. So let's go on to the next part of the poem. paused as with suspicion of my pen, and then came racing wildly on again to where my manuscript was not yet dry, then paused again and either drank or smelt with loathing, for again it turned to fly plainly with an intelligence I dealt. Now the poet's attention is totally caught by the living mite, and he's observing it pretty closely, and he realizes that uh, that it's kind of moving in fits and starts with bursts of energy and then pausing. It is suspicious of his pen, and then it's racing wildly again, and it seems to hover over the ink that has not dried, and it turns away, it moves away quickly, indicating that it really doesn't like it. And this clearly shows the poet that the mite has become aware of his presence, and it is intelligent and alert at its mite level, right? And what was really beneath his notice is now totally at par. So you have these two living beings, the poet, a human, and the mite. All right? And we know that the mite is aware of the danger it's in. It's already smelt the ink, and it can sense the poet's presence. So surely both of them seem to be at par as far as the level of consciousness goes, right? Maybe the degrees vary, but both of them are alive and alert to one another. All right, the next bit. It seemed too tiny to have room for feet, yet must have had a set of them complete to express how much it didn't want to die. It ran with terror and with cunning crept. It faltered, and I could see it hesitate. Then in the middle of the open sheet, cover down in desperation to accept whatever I accorded it of fate. So there you are. The poet is, funnily enough, surprised that the mite has legs, it has feet. I mean, you don't expect something so biologically tiny to have feet. And that's why he's expressing his surprise. And what is more, uh, he feels, yeah, definitely, he cannot see it, but he's sensitive to its movement. He's watching it with much interest now, and he can already feel its survival instincts, coming up. Like, this mite didn't want to die. So what did it do? It used all its tactics to escape. Okay? It ran with terror. It had feelings. It moved rapidly. And then it crept with cunning. It decided to creep, move slowly, imagining that it could escape detection. And after that, it faltered. Didn't know what to do. It stumbled a bit in its movement, and he could see it hesitate. And then suddenly, in the middle of the paper, in the middle of the sheet, it just covered down, just lay flat, accepted its fate. It left it to the poet to take whatever action he felt like. And It's amazing the way he has used different verbs to let us know that verbs, and also, he has indicated his feelings to let us know that the might is a living entity and has its own personality, its little bit of required intelligence to survive. It moves at different, speeds. It really tries to escape. It is afraid. It is cautious. And finally, it just surrenders. Amazing. And so we can conclude that in terms of biological capabilities and feelings, it is totally at level with man. Right? Right? And so we move on to the next bit, and this is an extremely interesting stanza because this is where Frost is, making his attitude to the might very credible to us. Okay? And I would say that even though this poem appears terribly simple, he has used a lot of techniques to get across to us, to convey his feelings, so that we don't dismiss what he says, what he intends to do as over sentimentality and just rubbish. That it's something he's just, pretending. So, let's do it. I have none of the tenderer than thou, collectivistic, regimenting love with which the modern world is being swept. Yeah, that's true. We have all kinds of groups today taking up, very, very, you know, kind of what they imagine are solid issues, and then they make big noise about it, fighting over it, like they express tenderness for animals, save this, save that, that kind of a thing. And the entire modern world is in this kind of a wave. But the poet makes it very clear that he doesn't have this kind of a love and this kind of a sentimentality to save things, or nor does he belong to some group to profess, his unity with them and then shout to save things. No, it's nothing like that. But this poor mite, when he calls it a poor mite, we realize that what he feels for it is genuine sympathy and a kind of connection with it. It is as living as him. And so he regards it as such, attributing that much respect and dignity to it. And he says, like, since it did not display any evil intent. It didn't mean to harm him. It wasn't trying to harm him. There it was, just, present on that sheet of paper. Therefore, he felt that he should just allow it to be there till it perhaps fell asleep, and then slowly get rid of it, sparing its life. So what was considered earlier by him as a speck of dust, probably, is now, uh, you know, totally, with him. He feels some kind of an empathy with it as one human being observing, as a human being observing another living creature, maybe very, very small, tiny, microscopic in size, but what the hell? It's living, it has its personality, it has intelligence, It has all its survival instincts, so he wants to spare it. Not because he wants to tell the reader, oh my God, I really want to save it. I'm the kind of human who has a lot of love for other human beings, and I'm not the kind who will just snuff it out, etc. No, that's not his intention at all. He arrives at an extremely credible decision, and yes, the reader is with him at this point. So let's go on to the next bit. I have a mind myself and recognize mind when I meet with it in any guise. No one can know how glad I am to find on any sheet the least display of mind. So there you are. Now, this is the concluding 4 lines, and this is where the poet expresses his reverence for living beings. And this kind of reverence has been ignited in him, and it comes to light to us too, because he admires anything that has a mind, that has some thinking faculty, some capability to feel things, right? And he admires it no matter what form it takes. And as you know, all living beings have their own characteristic behavior, and we have to respect them no matter how small they are. And it is this kind of a reverence that the poet is communicating to us. And I don't know, I felt, this is my interpretation of it, I felt that he's going a step further when he says, no one can know how glad I am to find on any sheet, no matter what, the least display of mind. Now, the word sheet, it really triggers off at least two meanings for me. It triggers off really two meanings. At one level, it is a sheet of paper, okay? That's what it is at one level. But at another level, it is, oh goodness, I seem to have blanked out suddenly. So at one level, like I said, it is a mere sheet of paper. But at another level, it is also the thoughts and perceptions expressed on paper, which is parallel to the conscious attempt made by the might to escape death. Both the act of thinking, the part of the might, and doing, as in the part of the poet who is writing, displays intelligence. So he is now commenting on writing too. So anything that is written, anything in fact which images effort, deserves to be regarded as worthy, be it writing or even the frantic efforts of a might to escape. So I think it's a terrific poem. It really makes me think between the lines, and it also, it will also make me think before I swat another teeny weeny living creature in future, because that's what we do all the time, thoughtlessly killing little things. But A mosquito? I would rather stay away from it. I wouldn't want dengue or anything. So I leave you now to contemplate over this poem a little bit more, and it's really interesting. And if you like my take on it, do subscribe to my channel. I could do with a few subscribers, and I wouldn't mind a like. And I really invite your comment. As a student of ICSE, do you think my explanation helped you? Let me know. Bye for now.